ask you, have you ever met someone for the first time and just felt an instant connection? Well, that's how I felt when I first met Leslee. I was at Copper Fox coming to hear Max Solomon speak, and he was running for governor in the Illinois Republican gubernatorial race at the time. So Leslee was there as an advisor, and she was part of his inner circle. And that's when we first met, had this instant connection. Well, Leslee is to politics, and she is uniquely qualified to speak the Constitution. In Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C., her father, a Navy veteran, was asked to become the... Oh, I thought you said he was in the Navy. Okay. Scratch that. I misunderstood.
He helped design the F-14. He was an aeronautical engineer.
Okay. Aeronautical engineer. Okay. But he was testifying in Congress and was asked to become the first staff director of the subcommittee on federal spending under the Senate Budget Committee. And then he spearheaded the rewriting of government contracts and laws back in the day when we were spending $600 on toilets, right? So he later became director of federal procurement. But the principles Leslee learned growing up have greatly influenced her thinking and served her well. Her parents never let school interfere with her education. She was frequently taken out of school in order to attend Senate hearings or watch her father testifying. So not only was Leslee learning about the Constitution and rule of law, she saw firsthand the difference that one person can make and how to stand up to bureaucrats. In fact, one vivid memory is of her mother taking her out of school for something, and the principal wanted to know why she was taking Leslee out. Leslee's mom told him in no uncertain terms, "I'm the parent, I don't need a reason." So in high school, Leslee was part of a handful of students selected for the Johns Hopkins pilot study on different ways of teaching. That was a life-changing experience that I'm sure also planted seeds of homeschooling in the future. From there, Leslee graduated from William and Mary and received her law degree from Washington University in St. Louis. During college, she interned for the Senate Budget Committee and also for Doug Wilder, the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. She was a law clerk for the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Crime, and don't hold this against, but Chuck Schumer was the chair and her boss. She drafted the law. Some of us old enough can remember the three law. You remember that? Leslee was a part of that and held hearings on that part of the omnibus crime. So Leslee has been a local area prosecutor in addition to drafting ordinances and handling constitutional issues. During the Clinton administration, she successfully litigated several multi-million-dollar federal cases. So Leslee has taught the Constitution and government to thousands of students since 2008 and has worked with hundreds of families over the last 10 years, helping parents to reclaim their child's education and provide individualized curriculum. She is an author, speaker, entrepreneur, and political activist. However, her best role and biggest blessing has been that of mom and homeschool mom. So we are so fortunate to have her with us tonight. Please help me welcome my friend, Leslee Dirnberger.
That was a very humbling introduction. Thank you very much, Roxanne. Kind of a trip down memory lane. But I definitely want to convey that
we all are sovereigns. And I learned that, let me see if I can, there we go, that'll work. I really want everybody to understand that story that Roxanne told about my mom. I shared that with her. It kind of came to my memory when we were talking, because it's a little thing, but it really impacted me, and it empowered me. And that is what tonight's all about. At least that's what I hope, right? That's my prayer for tonight, is that you all will feel empowered and know that you all already have the power to change everything. And I think a lot of you have heard that before, but a lot of people go, well, okay, well, how? Like, what do we do? And so hopefully tonight I can connect some dots for you, and we can walk through this together and kind of arrive at local, which I love that you brought that up. The key is local. And does everybody here realize we live in a state that has a township form of government? Remember that. That is really important. And there's so much education that I'm still learning. I love it, right? But I think having that foundation that I had, going to law school and being taught wrong things. I'm going to say it straight up. I haven't practiced law for about 14 years now. But the foundation that I had and the experience that I had, and I specifically told Roxanne that those multi-million-dollar cases were during the Clinton administration to make all of you go, oh, red flag, yes, big time. So maybe another time we'll all put our phones in Faraday bags and we'll have a drink together, and I'll share those stories with you that help to inform me about what's really going on. So unfortunately, that's not something we could share tonight, but let's get started because I've got a lot to share with you, and hopefully I love the question period, so we want to make sure we have time for that. So go ahead. I couldn't think of a better quote to start with. I love Thomas Jefferson. I know no safe depository of the ultimate powers of the society, but the people themselves. And if we think them not enlightened enough to exercise their control with a wholesome discretion, the remedy is not to take it from them, but to inform their discretion by education. This is the true corrective of abuses of constitutional power. That's what this organization's all about. And that's what we have to continue to remember. My true passion, I've taken all my government background, is education. I call it the tool that God's given me, right, to try to make everybody understand that, understand what they have their hands on. Go ahead. Oh, got to get Ronald Reagan in here a little bit, even though I have to tell you, good old Ronald Reagan could have squashed the Department of Education immediately. It was under Ronald Reagan that the Department of Education, by the way, on a federal level, and this is relevant to what we're going to talk about tonight, was instituted. It was passed during Carter's administration, and Ronald Reagan actually ran on a platform of abolishing it and wiping it out when he got in. So I just want to throw that out to everybody, and for this reason. We're not here to put our trust and our full trust and everything into man. And that's where I come from. This is not about one man. That's too much pressure for anybody, first of all. Nobody, right? None of us are perfect, and nobody's perfect, and we should never be putting everything in. And we all know, being here in Illinois, that, oh man, it's just the uniparty, right? So the whole political parties, we're going to kind of dispense with that, right? But I absolutely love what he says here. Government's first duty is to protect the people, not run their lives, right? But we're going to also talk about this whole protect thing here later. Okay, next slide. So I'm going to start with the founder's political spectrum. I don't know if you all have heard of the book, The 5,000-Year Leap. I have been teaching, awesome. Linda, hey, good to see you. The 5,000-Year Leap, I have a copy of it over there so you can see what it looks like. I have been teaching out of that book. That was actually my curriculum book and my spine that I built my course around, that I've been teaching teenagers and their parents, I found out. Apparently, I taught online for about 8-9 years, and I heard from parents going, oh my God, we put it on the TV, and we all sit and watch your class. So I love that, right? Just learn. But the founders' political spectrum. So that's why I wanted to talk about, get the parties out, right? Let's not think about parties right now. Let's think about philosophy and foundational ideas, right? And where they come from. So the founders' political spectrum followed ruler's law, which is tyranny. Now, when I say that, what do you guys think on the political spectrum? What's tyranny? Is it left? Is it right? What is tyranny? Dictatorship. It's interesting you use that word. I'm going to come back to that. Left, right? So when we think left, 100% government, right? 100% control. But do you know, I'm going to argue that there's no such thing as a dictatorship. Because a dictatorship implies one person. I'm sorry, what was that? Totalitarianism, yeah, as like a philosophy. So if I asked you, how many forms of government do we have? Right? I would argue we can get rid of dictatorship because one man can't truly do it, right? They have to have a little group. So oligarchy, I would argue, right? And the founders would argue, right? So you got an oligarchy. So you got ruler's law, then there's no law, anarchy. And in the middle, you've got people's law. So those are the phrases we're going to start with tonight. Go ahead. Characteristics of ruler's law. I'm not going to read through these. You guys can see them. But look at some of these. Boy, can we relate to this? Government power is top down. Government is by the whims of men. Problems solved by more bureaucracy. Okay. A lot of these. Edicts are the law and then interpreted and enforced. Does that sound familiar? Okay. So this is ruler's law. Right? At the bottom it says all sovereign powers in the conqueror. Authority is gained by force. Force doesn't have to be with a gun. Does it? We all know that now, don't we? Mandates. That's a lovely word. Okay, next. Here are the characteristics of people's law, which is what our founders strive for and what we're looking for in a balance, right? A commonwealth of free men. Laws are natural laws given by divine dispensation. Get this. Responsibility to solve problems begins with the individual. Isn't that a wonderful concept? And one we all try to teach our children, and then when they get out in the world or in schools, government schools I call them now, I don't even like to call them public schools anymore, organized into small, manageable groups, right? Punishment means reparations to the person wronged. And I'm reading these and I'm bringing these, keep with me, because what tonight is all about and what we're going to talk about is words are powerful. And I want you to see how certain words that are used constantly intertwine. Go ahead, David. So here's an incredibly powerful illustration. Okay? So do you see here, this is what people's law is supposed to be. And look at this. This is a fulcrum. Think about it as a fulcrum. So when things start to go, it's law of physics, right? When things start to go too far one way, are we going to get anywhere if somebody's jumping up and down in the middle? No. Nothing's going to balance out unless we go further this direction. Keep that in mind. So when you're talking to people or you hear people talking about whether it's Trump or, going too far, there's no such thing when you're trying to balance things out and get back to people's law. You have got to be pretty radical. But here is what all power is in the people. That is the base. That is the foundation of our republic. Then the next level is family, municipal, township, In some states, it's county. Then the state, and then the national. This is how much they've got. You know why? Because that's what we say they have. Government is not in place to protect our rights. How often people say that? Anybody? I know I used to. That's wrong. Government is in place, and the Constitution is in place. That Constitution is instruction to the government from the people. Let that sink in. That document is an instruction from us to them. Okay? Because we're telling them this is what you're allowed to do. This is what we're allowed to do. Anybody feel like it's this way now? Right? It's kind of a rhetorical question. I mean, even the teenagers, when I show that, they're all like, yeah, no. It's pretty much upside down. And I ask this question of my students in the second class that I teach every semester. And I ask them, I say, what do you, and this is since 2008, where do you feel like we are right now? Where do you feel like we are on this spectrum? Oligarchy, republic, democracy. By the way, if I hear one more person call it a democracy, oh my gosh, my kids, whenever anybody says it, they're like, Mom, don't listen, right? I'm like, okay, I get it. But that was intentional. Do you all know that? Good. I love this crowd. This is awesome. I love talking to my people. This is great. Okay, everything's been intentional. But let's try to unravel this and make sure that we understand and are targeted for these elections coming up. Okay? So this is what we want to get back to. Okay, next. Guys, see this pyramid here? It might be hard for you to see. Actually, if you go to the next slide, they got flipped for me. Leviticus says, proclaim liberty throughout the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It's pretty bold. It's pretty straightforward. Do you realize, by the way, that's what's inscribed on the Liberty Bell, just like our 10 Commandments on the Supreme Court, right? Which a lot of people, and first of all, they're never taught in school that. The Israelites, do you realize, were a commonwealth of free men? Look at how they were organized. And this is all biblical. All the people were organized into small, manageable units. Remember where you saw that? People's law. Emphasized strong local self-government. The code of justice was based on reparation, not fines and punishment by the government. Remember that, because that's common law, and that's another phrase we're going to get to. Okay? Except first-degree murder. That was the one thing that was absolute under common law. First-degree murder, death penalty. Accused were presumed innocent until proven guilty. This is in the Bible. This is the way the Israelites were structured. The leaders were elected, and new laws were approved by the common consent of the people. Think town meetings, town hall meetings they used to have, right? Back in the day, in colonial times. Can you go back, Devin, to the other one now? So remember the pyramid over there? Look at this. More than 600,000 families, more than 3 million people with the power to govern themselves. These are approximate based on the book of Numbers. 600 groups of 1,000 families, and this is where it comes from. This is their community now, the municipal level, the township level. And look, you're getting all the way up here. Essentially, Joshua was the vice president over the military, and Aaron was vice president over internal affairs. Joshua also helped Moses with his speeches. All right, but you've got the same setup. This is nothing new, and this is what we have to remember going back, foundational, and what truly natural rights are. Okay, next, Devin, or 2, I guess, right? Okay. Any ruler who enacts, like you see here, an unjust law ceases to be an authority. Can we all think of some unjust laws that have been passed? I think so. And we all sit here, including me, we're like, okay, that's completely unconstitutional. It's like one of our favorite phrases, I think, over the last, I don't know, especially 5 years, right? And they become a tyrant. Do you know the word tyranny comes from the Greek for secular rule? Kind of interesting, right? Secular rule, which means the rule by men instead of the rule of law, which implies the rule of law is rule under God. There's been a lot of talk, too, about the whole, like, the law and the justice system and lawyers and the whole British, registration, the bar, and what that means. You know what? It almost doesn't matter. Because I'm sovereign, you're sovereign, you're sovereign. You all choose the system and the place that you are going to play in. Who here was here when Ann Vandersteel came in? She was great. The reason I'm asking that is this whole state national came up, right? And National Assembly. And we're all hearing about a lot of different groups and a lot of, things going on to try to make something happen. Okay, so tonight, I really want you to keep your mind open as we walk through this to understand that there are nuggets of truth. And there are some good teachings in all of it. But what you need to think about and look at is, why do you need to say, I'm no longer a citizen? And I'm going to get to that and talk about the difference between the word people, or we the people, and a citizen, and kind of maybe help you see why the disconnect is there. Okay? All right, so keep that in mind when we say rule of law. We're not talking about statutes and statutory law. There's a difference between statutes, statutory law, and fundamental law, natural law. Okay? Stay with me. Next, I'll connect it. Okay, so here are natural law. We've all heard of natural law. If not, if we've heard of it, do we really get it? Do we really understand? Right? It's a moral theory. It's a theory of principles that our rights as human beings come from a divine creator. Right? That's it. For me, it comes from God. My one and true God. Other people may not have that belief, but there's a divine creator for some others. It's in line with nature and rational, and that comes from Cicero, right? All the way back, even before that. But Cicero really threw that out there as a philosophy, which was hugely contrary to the thinking back then. Go ahead, Devin. Keep in mind, no matter what form of government we the people establish, just like in the Bible, God instructed, this is what Moses, this is what the form of government should look like. The same as the republic. The people are sovereign, right? Our rights come from God, not the government we created. And we choose. Next. That's kind of interesting how that happened. Wonder if that was in the translation. That wasn't there when I did it. Did it kind of, yeah. All right, cool. All right, well, you can see most of it in here. This is talking about, I wanted to give you some of the our founding fathers' foundation, because all of this matters to help you kind of connect the dots with what I'm talking about here, right? Keep in mind, we're talking about natural rights. We're talking about where those rights come from and how that kind of plays out. So the Magna Carta is a very important document. I've got a resource sheet over there, and what I did is we did QR codes for you to make it simple, to take you right to some of these. What I put on there, I tried to be discerning about what is important to read, and you'll see the connections between them. The Magna Carta is the foundation of constitutional law in the English world. Why? Because it was the very first time that a king acknowledged that the divine right for ruling was his. You guys hear this before? Know this? Because the Magna Carta established that everybody had rights. Okay? This is hugely important. It was done in 1215. There were later versions of it in 1225 and 1297. But it's the first time that the king did need to protect the rights and protect. And that's why we kind of use that word. Right? Okay. Next. The English Bill of Rights. Who here has read anything about the English Bill of Rights or knows about it? Anybody? Hear about that? This is another really important foundational document. Okay? 1689. That was around the same time, we're going to talk about this in a little bit, that was around the same time as Massachusetts, actually a little later, where Massachusetts was forming their government, their township form of government in the colonies. Just to give you some perspective, right, of what was going on. Because here in this country, we had self-governance for a very long time before we had a revolution. Okay? That's so important because we already had figured it out, and it was at the local level. We had figured it out. Why in the world do we want someone who lives hundreds and hundreds of miles away, who isn't my neighbor, to tell me that my other neighbor needs food stamps? We see the need in our neighborhood. And the neighbors and the churches and the community step in and step up. We've created this mentality now that, oh, well, the government will do it. The government will do it. I know if I didn't have to pay taxes, man, I could sure help a whole lot more people in my community, couldn't I? But the government says, oh, you don't know best. We know best how to use your money. Right? So keep that in mind, because the English Bill of Rights in 1689 started to write, and if you read through it, I've got a QR code over there. It had things like, freedom of speech and debate in Parliament has to be unimpeded. No excessive bail or cruel and unusual punishments may be imposed. Anybody know what amendment that is in our Constitution, federal Constitution? I know, you didn't think you were going to be quizzed tonight, were you? You got your books there. You got your constitutions. Anybody know? 8th. Devin, yes. I should have brought some candy or something to throw to you, like I do with the students, right? Candy always works with teens, you know. That's the only reason they like me as a teacher, I'm telling you. It's candy. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so a lot of what you're going to see, no taxation by royal prerogative. I love the chuckle because, yeah, right? What have we all done? We've all said, yeah, we're going to play in that system that you've created. I'm tempted to tangent here a little bit on that, because do you all realize that a 501c3, 501c4 had to be created by the IRS so that they could control religion, education, and know where everybody's money is going and get the money and get at the money. It is simply a contract. It is simply a contract that they created. So if you apply, you've now contracted with them. And you've said, oh, I'm agreeing to contract with you. You can contract with anybody for anything, right? That's a personal thing. At common law, statutory law, right? You've now agreed to contract with them. Do you know that any religious organization is non-taxable? And if you want to know more about that, we can talk another time. But it goes along with what we're talking about tonight, because guess what? You've contracted. So now it's a public, not a private. Remember that. You're contracting. So that's why the Supreme Court, Scalia, God bless him, actually my favorite justice, all pay attention to this justice. I love it because he's always under the radar. I have followed him since he took the bench in 2006, I believe. Justice Samuel L. Alito. He gets it right. Even when I kind of don't want to agree with him, he nails it. Okay, so what happens is, Scalia even said, sorry, you contracted. If you hadn't contracted, you'd be okay. Think about that. It's choices. Okay, next. So our founding fathers, that's kind of part of their foundation. They were excellent students of history. And they studied this. They knew what was going on. They understood. They also said, Ben Franklin said to the woman who asked him, some say it was the wife of the mayor of Philadelphia, there's different stories floating around, doesn't matter. Sir, what do we have? And he said, a republic, ma'am, if you can keep it. Excellent. Here's what they mean by that. A republic can be the most spectacular form of government. Hence the title of the book, The 5,000-Year Leap. But it can also be the worst. And it all depends on we, the people, having the courage and the knowledge and the courage to say, we are instructing you, not the other way around. Okay? I'm going to start now, too. I don't want to forget this document. Too many people forget about the Declaration of Independence. Okay? And I don't need to read this to you. You guys should know this. But there are some key words and key phrases that I want you to pay attention to. Some of those to the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. Next screen. Huge. Not only are we endowed with unalienable rights, to secure these rights, this is what gets glossed over way too much. Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That is what we should be talking about so much to our kids. Right? Whenever any form of government becomes destructive, it's the right of the people to alter or abolish it. So now we're going to get to how do we keep going so we know how to do that. Okay, next. Taking that, we now have our United States Constitution. To establish, anybody here know what a trust is? Right? You guys probably have some trusts, right? Most people think of a trust as like, oh, I'm gonna put in, my money, protect my money, for my kids, protect my assets, right? Does anybody in here realize this Constitution is a trust? Our U.S. Constitution establishes a trust document. That's very important to understand. In order to establish a trust, you need to have who? We the people. Purpose, as the enactor or the trustor, right? What's our purpose? Right here. To form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Last one, huge, an enacting clause. You have to have an enacting clause. do ordain and establish. Law school, they didn't tell us this. Even came up. Know what we were told in no uncertain terms? No, it's not. Baloney. That's absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. The people are the trustors and the guarantors. The representatives are our trustees. This is exactly what that is. It's an enacting, enabling clause. And it sets up then what we're instructing them and what they are permitted to do. Okay, next. Everybody turn to, I'll give you a page number. Everybody pull out your Constitution. We're going to have some interaction here. Let me give you a page number. With the light, I knew I'd need my little cheaters here. Does everybody have one? Turn to page 35. Article 1, Section 8 of our Constitution. By the way, what does Article 1 set up? Anybody know? It says it in there, but it sets up, yeah, I heard it out here. It sets up our legislative branch. Do you know there are about twice as many words in Article 1 as there are in Article 2? What's Article 2? Executive branch. Article 3 is judicial. And there's, again, half as many words. You know why? That's the order of power. That's the order and the intentional order of power that was set up. So now, look at Article 1, Section 8. Congress shall have the power. Okay? It delineates for you the 18 powers that they're allowed to have. Take a quick look at that. There are two huge categories that are probably the most, I would argue, most important categories right now that we should all be paying attention to that are not in those powers given to Congress. Let me know if you think of one or two that are not in there. Amen. Education. You were paying attention earlier. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. EPA, the environment. What else isn't in there? A lot of departments, and we're going to, in the executive branch, there's a lot of that there, right? Because, let me ask you this. Our legislative branch is, broadly, what is it supposed to do? Pass laws, right? What about the executive branch? To execute those laws. So the argument goes, I need all this to help execute these laws. And everybody goes, oh, okay. No, that's not what it means, right? It doesn't mean you get to solve problems by more bureaucracy. And what about the judicial branch? To do what? Interpret the laws. But the judicial branch has the least amount of power according to our founding fathers. We can pretty much ignore them. And by the way, did you know the Constitution only establishes one court, the Supreme Court, and it gives it very clear jurisdiction. And then it says the legislature can enact and come up with lower courts if they want to. Okay? So again, another huge category that you're not going to find in these 18 powers that are specifically enumerated to Congress is anything about health care. Are you kidding me? Our founding fathers are not rolling over in their grave. They're jumping up and down and screaming, what idiocy is this? Right? Because that is the most personal thing, just like education. So what I say, and I'm so passionate about with what I do in my A job, is I'm so passionate because it drives me insane that our society and our school system tries to tell parents they're not the experts in their own kids, on their own kids. That is such lunacy to me. It blows my mind. I was very happy that it got Youngkin into office in Virginia. That was great. By them saying, oh, by the way, leave education to the experts. We know your kids better than you do. Garbage. And that's why Congress, remember our pyramid, Congress, federal is one little teeny thing up here in very specific areas. Now couple that with our 10th Amendment. It's an oft forgotten 10th Amendment. Everybody turn to page, because the 9th is key too. Turn to page 47. The 9th Amendment says, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. In other words, don't get any big ideas. Because just because we've said Congress can oversee these things, the power to do that still comes from us. That doesn't mean they take over. Now look at the 10th Amendment. The powers not delegated, I don't know why I'm reading this one, to the United States by the Constitution are prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. In other words, our founding fathers knew. That's why George Mason led the charge of not signing the Constitution, because this Bill of Rights wasn't in it, because he knew that if a republic goes the wrong way, we're in trouble. And it's easy to do if you don't have a Bill of Rights, just like the one that was put in the Virginia Constitution, which is almost word for word like this. Okay? Huge. So you start with Article 1, Section 8, but then you move to that. In other words, I'm trying to show you how clear it is and give you information to be able to share with others how clear it is, right? That we are sovereign and power, and we've allowed statutes, and we'll get to that next. We've allowed ruler's law, we've allowed statutory law, we've allowed codified law to overtake the foundation of our very Constitution, our country, period, which is common law. Okay? Next. I would argue the Constitution represents the considered, deliberate, fundamental, that's a huge word, fundamental will of the people. Whereas ordinary laws or statutes are merely represent the temporary, hasty whims of men. Think about that, right? What does it take to amend our Constitution? It takes a lot, right? I love it. I'm hearing exactly what it is. There's two ways, right? But it takes a lot. By the way, did you know, here's a plus about Ronald Reagan as far as I'm concerned. Do you know Ronald Reagan saw the way that the schools were going? And he heard from William Bennett. I don't know if you guys remember, those of you who are around. But William Bennett, Bill Bennett, was the first Secretary of Education. And he got in there and went to Reagan and said, holy cow, this is horrible. I had no idea the lock the national education, the NEA, had on our education system. We are in a lot of trouble, and I cannot lead this agency. We need to get rid of it. And to keep it quiet, he then became, anybody remember what he became known for? He became our first drug czar. Reagan named him drug czar. So he came off as Secretary of Education. And that's really important to understand because this was taking over. And the executive branch, and the agencies, and the bureaucracy. and allowing that to take over. Because the process of establishing it, like I say here, is long and arduous. I mean, to pass a law, especially in this state, with a supermajority lock that they have, it's just the whims, it's what they want to do. They're completely not performing as a trustee should. Let me ask you this, those of you in here who have a trust, if your trustee wasn't doing what you said they should do, would they stay your trustee for very long? If they were stealing your money, because let's face it, that's exactly what's going on for all of us right now, would you say, oh, that's okay, just stop, try not to take any more? Yeah, what was that Kane County referendum coming up? I mean, really. We wouldn't stand for it. We wouldn't stand for it. So why are we standing for it now? And I love the activism, but we have to be more together on this activism. And we can I'll talk about that more later. There are a lot of these groups and a lot of going on. We got to pull it together, everybody. You know, I'm not here to, I've been saying this for years now. I'm learning about a lot of different groups because I'm trying to figure this out, right? And we got to figure this out the right way. I don't care what group it is. I don't care what your title is. I don't care. You know, Roxanne really hit it on the head for me, which I really appreciated. My favorite role, my favorite job, if you want to call it that, but I don't look at it like that, is mom and wife. Do you know when I was in college or law school, there's no way I would have said that. None. I bought it hook, line, and sinker. That in order to be a woman in that era, whatever, and you know, you're supposedly smart, whatever, you have to do this to be successful. No, and that's all cultural. But it's incredibly important and foundational that we understand that what is it you want? And I'm not disparaging it. I know God had a purpose for law school. Let me tell you, I had some fun because in that case that I was mentioning, I won, I'm just going to say. And I have to say, yeah, thank you. But I have to tell you, it felt good because those people I was up against, first of all, scared the hooey out of me. Second of all, they were some of the biggest crooks you can imagine. And I had no idea that existed at that. I didn't. As much as I was brought up, you know, attending Senate hearings, I had no clue. But we have the power. I'm a big Thomas Jefferson fan. Yes, I know he had his faults. Believe me, I get it. But so do we all. But I am a huge Thomas Jefferson fan, not a Hamilton fan. My kids had to kind of pin me down to watch Hamilton. Sorry. It was so inaccurate, it was not even funny. So it was torture for me for a lot of it, I just have to say, including the fact that Hamilton didn't believe in the people. That's why he wanted the national treasury. And in that quote I gave you by Thomas Jefferson, he was actually kind of talking to Hamilton and people like Hamilton. They were pretty divided in that with our founding fathers. Right? Hamilton did not trust people that they would make the best and wisest decision if they were given all of the information. Jeannie and I were just talking about this right before we started. Now, it's too much information. How much can we throw at everybody? How much can we throw at you so that you don't even know which end is up? Again, why I've been so passionate about teaching this topic to students. I can't tell you the number of times when I was teaching, pretty much every semester, I had at least one student who would come into class going, hey, Mama D, that's my nickname, hey, Mama D, I'm a socialist. And I'd say, awesome, can you tell me what that means? Some of them could, or define it. Others were like, I don't know. I'm like, awesome, well, what do you believe? Let's start there. Because in my class, I'm fine. You can have an opinion, but here's the key. Can you back it up? Do you know why you have that opinion? It's also okay to say, I don't know why I have that opinion, but maybe it's because your parents do. That's okay. So now why don't we start thinking for ourselves? And looking and thinking about things. Do you know by the end of every single one of my classes, utilizing the 5,000-year leap as my base, but also the Constitution itself, and walking through this, every single one of those students were so, by the end, they're like, oh my God, Mama D, what can we do? You have no idea how many of my friends think this way. Like, yeah, I do. So now you need to go and talk to them about this, and you need to share it with them. Same thing. We have to get back to foundations and the foundation of our country. Next. I'm bringing up another resource that I forgot to bring one of my many copies of it. You guys have heard of the Federalist Papers, right? Excellent. How many of you have read at least some of them? Okay. It's a pretty dense tome to read it all, right? But they are powerful. And Hamilton wrote the majority of them, second Madison, and then anybody remember who the third was? Only wrote a few. John Jay became the first Chief Supreme Court Justice. Hamilton wrote this one. And I wanted to, because I'm now we're going to start progressing here. Why should appointed judges have the power to strike down an ordinary law, a statute, see the word ordinary that I'm using, not fundamental, when there is a clash between ordinary law and a constitutional or foundational law? Why? Okay, well, Hamilton talks about here, look at, this is the Federalist Papers, for those of you who don't know, were written anonymously, Publius, and, yeah, exactly, and were published in New York papers because New York was not on board with signing this new Constitution at all. They said, nope, we are going to lose our autonomy and our sovereignty, and we're not okay with it. We're good with our Articles of Confederation. They're good. And that was a big blow. They knew that if they couldn't get New York, they were in trouble. So Alexander Hamilton, Madison, and John Jay wrote these to explain their thinking. Okay? No legislative act, therefore, contrary to the Constitution, can be valid. No legislative act. So what's the big problem these days with a very independent, supposedly, that was the intention, is that the judiciary would be for life because they would be completely independent. How do you get to there? How do you get in front of the court? How do you do it? I'm kind of asking a serious question for a reason. Like, it seems like a basic question, but what happens? How do you get before the Supreme Court? What has to happen? You have to go right. You've got to go through a whole lot of other courts. And oh, by the way, we've created this whole kind of statute system with lawyers. And I used to say this myself. I used to say I'm the least litigious lawyer you'll ever meet because I've seen lawyers are the only ones who win. Period. Do you know the bankruptcy laws? Do you know who gets paid first and fully before any other creditor? The lawyers. Go figure. Right? So let's think about this. Could we file a suit and go before a court, go into a court by ourselves? Of course we can. Of course we can. So why aren't we doing it? Oh, just wait. Just wait. I won't have time to get into all of that. We might have to have a whole class set up here going forward. We have to have the courage and the knowledge. Courage and knowledge. But we have to have the right knowledge and understand how it all fits together, right? To deny this would be to affirm that the deputy is greater than his principal, that the servant is above his master. They are using language that is so clear. We are the master, they are the servants. Period. That the representatives of the people are superior to the people themselves. Go ahead, Devin. Yeah. Oh. Okay. Got it. Okay. We're going to go faster. Okay. So, read Federalist 78 is really good. No. Okay. Here we go, though. A constitution must be regarded by the judges as a fundamental law. For any of you in here who've read the Constitution or any of the cases, and I teach this in my pre-law mock trial class to my students, so they get it. When the court says this is a fundamental law, the Supreme Court says that and calls it that. A fundamental law. That means don't even try to mess with it. Don't try to mess with it, because our Supreme Court is following common law. Common law. That's why I love Alito. He gets it completely. He doesn't play the game. He is there to do his job for us. 100%. Keep going, Devin. I love this. If there should happen to be an irreconcilable variance between the two, that which has the superior obligation and validity ought, of course, to be preferred. In other words, the Constitution has to be preferred to the statute. The issue is getting it there. We all say it's unconstitutional. Oh, but I don't have the money to hire a lawyer and go through this and go through that. Look what, our local friend here, Jeannie Hedgepath, she's a good friend of mine. I know her and her daughter well. Thank the Lord, her daughter agreed to come out and homeschool after she got kicked out. It was amazing. Grace is incredible. Statute. The intention of the people to the intention of their agents. The only reason she could stand up for her rights is because we have some pretty awesome legal organizations that help, right? Students. Abraham Lincoln never went to law school. By the way, do you know the American Bar Association has been trying to require law school? Law school's not required. It's a way to learn. But guess what? You're getting taught the wrong things. There's the rub. There's the racket. I got taught this, and it was a great lesson. Never forget it, because it's happened to me. If you're sitting at the table and you look around and you can't identify the sucker, guess what? It's you. Yeah, unfortunately, that's happened to me a few times. I don't know about you guys, where I'm going, oh, yeah, okay, I need to rethink this. Okay? And that's what's happening. Okay, Devin, let's keep moving. More here. It's very powerful. Talking about the power of the people are superior to both. Right? That conclusion, the judicial and legislative power are inferior to the will of the people. I mean, they spell it out for us. They tell us here. Okay, next. Oh, what is going on with that thing? I don't even put that in my stuff. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. I wonder where that came from. Very cool. This is a very important one. So common law, right? It's a body of law, right, that basically says it's based on court or judicial, like held tribunals, right, where the decisions are based on prior decisions. And even more important, and that's I put up here the legal terms to kind of help you connect the dots. Precedent, or to be more fancy for us lawyers, stare decisis. All that means is we're looking at past law. We have a common law form of government in Illinois. The only state, do you know, that is not based in common law? Do you know we do have a state that isn't? Louisiana? Yes, excellent. Man, I love this crowd. This is awesome. Very good. Louisiana. They stayed with the, guess what? French. Yep, civil code from well before. So that's very interesting. So we'll have to help out Louisiana when the time comes. All right, but this is even more important. Common law. Has everybody here heard of maxims of law? You can't really read it there. But essentially a maxim of law are principles that are held and believed to be morally true and consistent. It's a constant. So it's based on principles, which is what we've been talking about, not on statutes and codes. Does that make sense? Everybody with me? Awesome, because we get really kind of caught up in the statutes, codes, and forget the common law. So what system do you want to play in? You want to play in the statutory and codified system? No. Or do we want to play in the common law system? And that's where the state-national thing catches people. And guess what? Still not the right way to go. And here's why. Because you've now said, I'm not one of we the people. Oh, and by the way, do you know to do that, you have to actually play in their system to get that acknowledged? So when a good friend of mine asked me to look into this, we kind of came to that same conclusion at the end. It made no sense. Okay, next, Evan. So it's all in the wording, everybody. And I want you to really think about this. Natural law versus ruler's law. Or another way to put it, people's law versus ruler's law. Another way to put it, common law versus ordinary law. Fundamental law versus ordinary law. No worries. Constitution versus statutes. Same. You see that? You see how it all connects? And it's all in the wording. And they keep playing with the wording. Don't let them get you. Okay, next, we're going to skip over 1871. This is kind of key, though, and I kept it really brief. It is so important, this act of 1871, because it redefined corporate entities can act as a person. Do you notice it says person specifically? Remember the word I've been using for us? People. Not man. People. People. We the people, not a person. If you're going to play in the common law system, people. Do you know another thing? What do you say when you say you live in a state, you say I'm a what? Resident. Do you know what system you're playing in when you say that? Yep, you're playing in the codified one. Do you know what you should be saying instead? Excellent. Who said that? Domiciled. Domiciled. It's all in the words, and we have to learn those. Okay, next. And that's what I'm saying here. People versus citizens or persons. Anybody know where this came from? It was the very first time the word citizen was ever used in our Constitution. It was defined in the 14th Amendment. 14th Amendment, I would argue, is one of the worst amendments in our entire Constitution. And if you ask most people what's the best, what do they say? Outside the Bill of Rights, 14th Amendment is the best. I hear that all the time. All the time. If I say, okay, without the first 10, what's your favorite? What's the best? It's one of the worst. Great question. It's one of the worst for a couple of reasons. Number one, because we're not paying attention, first of all, right? Well, I don't even want to say it. Somebody said it's about civil rights. Why is it bad to use the phrase civil rights? Which system are we playing in if we say civil rights? Statutory. Because that's a phrase that's just been used here. We all have natural rights. That is who we are. We already have them. We already have them. Civil rights is a way to kind of corral everybody. Let's keep going. So it defines citizen, and if you'll notice the word they keep using now, or the word they use, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of... Is that the people? No. No, it's the citizens. So this is the worst one because people, it completely blinded us, including me when I was younger. It hornswoggled us. Immunities of citizens. But guess what? That means I don't have to play that game. And you can choose. It's up to you. You have the power. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property, blah, 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 blah. But look what they use. Person. Correct. What does the preamble say? We, the people. And you don't see the word person or citizen until the 14th Amendment. Okay, next. We all know what dual sovereignty means. Right? Okay. Dual sovereignty is the foundational principle of our federal constitution. It means the federal government has sovereignty in very limited specific instances that we have said in Article 1, Section 8. Remember what the 10th Amendment said? The rest are then left to who? And the people respectively, or the states respectively, and to the people. So unless it's prohibited directly, for example, we don't want, Louisiana making a choice when we're going to go to war with France, right? So I've given you Federalists here for understanding why that's so important and what those Federalists tell you. The state is more powerful than the federal government, bar none. But guess what? The people are even more powerful because we can control and are closer to the state people, our school boards, our local, right? We all know we live near our state representatives. We can go knock on their door and say, I don't like what you're doing. Okay? Limited federal power, state autonomy. Next. I know, we got to stop. So, we're going to stop here, but I want you to see the connection. Illinois Constitution. This is the original equal footing with the original states. Go to the next one. These are our 3 times that we had it. And I'm not going to go through these, but maybe we can do another presentation or a class or something else another time. But what I want you to understand is, when you get to the Illinois and you look at, I'm just putting up here the enabling. Remember the preamble, the trust, forming the trust? Look at the words used here. Let's go to the next one, Devin. So we the people and forming a more perfect government, establish justice. Sounds familiar, right? Let's go real quick to our current one in 1970. I just want you to hear these words if you haven't read them ever. Provide for the health, safety, and welfare of the people. Maintain a representative and orderly government. Eliminate poverty and inequality. This is our constitution in our state. Yes, it does. And this was in 1970. Look at that. Assure legal, social, and economic justice. We have agreed to this. At least I didn't. Most of us probably didn't. But we kind of did. But this is our current one. This is the trust that we have. Provide opportunity for the fullest development of the individual. Doesn't that sound good, though? That sounds good. If you told somebody that, they go, that sounds good. No. No. Not good. Okay. To finish up. Like I said, township form of government. I just wanted you guys to see this. This is what townships did. Wow, imagine that. Education, roads, relief for the poor. Same thing we were talking about. All right, I'm open to questions. We don't have a lot of time.
No, I'll get a mic.
Yes, and I almost finished. You just got the last part bunched in here. Go to the next one so we can look at it. Okay. Know this. We'll do a whole nother session on what we need to do. Questions?
We have a hand up. Oh, shoot.
Ted? Test. Okay. So, I have two things, but the first thing is term limits. I like marriage vows, I think, that says till death do you part. Back then, we didn't live till past 45.
Right.
So that's, marriages that go long, they're kind of few and far between sometimes because we never expected to live this long in a lot of cases. But term limits, too. I'm sure the Founding Fathers had no idea that people could live as long as we're living today. So, that's an issue that never was resolved by our founding documents, which has caused us a lot of challenges.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Do you know they were a big fan of term limits, actually, a bunch of them were. But they didn't want to put it in, that was a debate, by the way, about that, right? Okay. Here's the philosophy of the Founding Fathers. This is why there was not supposed to be a $400,000 paycheck. Is because of this exact reason.
And you heard they just voted themselves a raise today.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah, to 200 and from 178 to 200, a 40% raise. Okay.
Okay. So term limits are an absolute, and yes, they did cover that. If that is what your question is, yes.
Okay.
And they didn't even imagine because it's supposed to be voluntary, and that's why Washington imposed two limits.
Yeah, you're successful, you go serve the people that made you successful, and you go back to doing what you did.
Correct.
Okay, voting laws during the China virus. Can we talk about that for a second? From what I understand, a lot of voting laws were changed under the guise of this emergency that did not go through each state's House, Senate, and signed by the governor. It's supposed to go through a process, and I was looking in here about the article, I don't know which in the Constitution where it says this, but from what I understand, the voting laws in 2020, which, by the way, I think is a blessing from above that
Huge.
He didn't win in 2020 now because we have so much more perspective and everything now. Mm-hmm. So that we didn't know that then, and we went through hell the last 4 years. But still, the voting laws were changed not per the Constitution, from what I understand, and especially the blue states, which created all of the nonsense of 2020. Is there a place in this where it actually says that voting laws are supposed to go through each state's individual state legislature, which means go through the House, the Senate, signed by the governor? Is that how voting laws get changed in states?
Oh, in the states. Is that what you're asking now?
Yes.
Within the state versus the federal.
Well, yeah, because the states control the voting laws. I mean...
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct. But there are some federal, remember, statutes, so you're asking constitutionally. Yes. So our federal constitution, the one we're just talking about right now, does not lay that out, right? Specifically. Like we have amendments, like for example, we kind of had to have an amendment to say, when the president gets shot and dies, what are we going to do? Because that's a federal level. Does that make sense? All right. So remember the 10th Amendment too. Whatever isn't specifically delineated to Congress is left for the states, right? So that's why, remember that dual sovereignty concept? That's vitally important. And I would say the other worst amendment, which goes to this point, do you all know that originally, and it was a powerful check on our government, the 17th Amendment. 17th Amendment allowed for direct election of senators. Everybody goes, oh, that's good, the people. No. The legislature that was a huge check, because prior to that, your state legislature selected, and they could pay attention to what they were doing, and they could yank them like that. And guess what? We have more contact with our state legislatures. So the same concept with respect to voting and what's going on in your state with the voting. Does that make sense? Okay. Anybody else?
No more.
A lot of info.
This will be the last question.
We could probably ask you to come back for another session about this question. So speak a little bit about how we can have laws with regard to immigration, and how one administration could ignore those laws and there are no lawsuits to cause them not to, and then the next administration comes in and says, we're going to enforce, quote, the rule of law, and we're going to kick out all these people who are here, quote, illegally. How does that work?
Well, immigration is in Article 1, Section 8, essentially. Immigration, naturalization, that's laid out in our federal constitution because it kind of makes sense, right? That affects everyone, right? So you're right, this is a whole huge topic, but what happens is the executives are acting as rulers, and we're allowing that, right? And that's the quick answer. They're acting as rulers, and the executives, they're just supposed to execute what laws are passed, and they're not upholding them, or they're ignoring it. I mean, there's no other way to say it. I'm sorry?
Don't some of the laws actually give...
Oh, but not the laws. Guess what? What's also the difference? Everybody hear what a regulation is?
Executive orders.
Ah. Are those laws? No. No. So that's the recent Supreme Court decision, if you missed that one, was huge. My buddy Sam got it right again. The Chevron case, where they said, hey, by the way, all these executive regulations are taking the place of laws. You're legislating now. You're not enacting, or you're not, enacting a law. You're creating a law. That was powerful. So we have to know that and understand it so we can stop with the rulers' garbage. Okay? And that's the quick answer for immigration. Yeah. And a lot of other things. Yeah.
What was the first executive order?
George Washington.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Somebody really went to school.
Yeah. Actually, that's a whole nother, I have a whole slide on how many there were. But you know what? There are actually, some presidents had more executive orders than you would think on both sides.
Just one more quick comment about this.
And I'm okay, Debbie.
Okay.
When we read this, it's difficult to understand because the
Yes.
way it's written.
Yes, it is.
It's so incumbent upon it to be rewritten in today's English where people would understand it better.
There's a concern.
Reading the Bible and stuff,
I agree. I agree.
it makes it frustrating for people to want to learn about it.
I understand, and yeah, maybe we should talk about a class for that. And one of my I'm going to throw this out. One of my resources that I have there, it is fantastic. It's called Patriot Academy. I actually have a call with them. I'm partnering with them. I have a call with them on Friday, and they're amazing. And I am a coach with them. It's just I've been a little busy, so I haven't done. I know it. I've gone through it. His biblical, yeah. I wouldn't do that, boy. Have you had some fun with ChatGPT? But Patriot Academy is amazing. So Rick Green it kind of does the teaching. It's called, they have a Constitution class, and then they have a biblical citizenship class. I highly recommend the Constitution one first because it's foundational and it covers the Constitution just bit by bit, and which is what I do in my classes as well, right? Where you really do need to understand it and what does it really mean, right? But that is one of the resources I gave you there on my resource sheet. Feel free to take that with you. Yeah. But also notice, I don't have time to get into it now, but you also notice some people think the punctuation's messed up. No, it's not. Originally, United was a small lowercase u, because it wasn't meant to be when it became a corporation after 1871. Even though you do see it capitalized in some places, the very, very original, the United, was small case, lowercase. The States was capitalized because the states are more important and have more sovereignty than our federal government.
Do you want to give a little quick info on your education and what you offer? This is how we can support Leslee.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we need to.
Yep.
We need to
Thank
show
you.
how we can support Leslee. If you're interested in learning more about what she offers, you go ahead
Thanks.
and explain.
Okay, so my company is Aspire Education. So I was a little bit taken aback, and I was so honored, actually, to be asked by this amazing group. I know you guys just know so much to talk on this. Usually I'm asked to speak on homeschooling and education choices. And Aspire Education, I say we strengthen and empower families by helping parents reclaim their child's education. And I'm really passionate about that. As you heard, I homeschooled my kids all the way through high school. And that was their choice even, because they saw what a mess it was. But I offer a variety of different things. I'm about to finish up. I created a system when I was homeschooling that takes into account like my leadership, because I'm very passionate. It's not about curriculum. It's about foundational, let's go back to that. It's about foundational values and morals of the family and having an individualized education. And it's pretty overwhelming out there if you want to homeschool, and there are literally hundreds and hundreds of curriculum. So what I do is I try to help people, and I use my system, personality tests for the parents as well, and learning tests, because that's critical. But I use that to help guide people and to get a really solid start. But they also have to come together as a family and figure out their values and figure out a bunch of other things in this system. And I'm about to complete, you can grab some flyers if you want, a video course, because I know not everyone, I only have so much time, and not everyone can work with me directly. So I'm almost done with my video course that will just help anyone get a solid start, hit the ground running for their kids at a really affordable rate. Also, if you want to start a micro school, I've helped homeschoolers all over the world. I've helped to start so many different co-ops, micro schools, whatever word you want to use. So there's information on that video course over there as well. But thank you. Yeah, I'm really passionate about that.
So thank you, Leslee.